The material in this podcast is for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice. You should not rely on this information to make any medical-related decisions. Nothing in this podcast constitutes a doctor-patient relationship, and nothing should be taken as specific medical advice for any given person. I hope you enjoy Marked Medicine.
Lights, camera, action, go!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Marked Medicine. I'm very excited to be here, and we are glad that you've chosen to join us. I'm Dr. Mark Brulte, and I'm an ER doctor with over 25 years of clinical experience in acute care medicine. Joining me today is my favorite nurse practitioner and my wife, Amanda Brulte.
I am his favorite, but like Mark said, my name is Amanda Brulte. I'm a family nurse practitioner. I've worked in pediatrics for 8 years, and I've recently embarked on a new journey in my career. I'm now working with palliative and hospice patients, and I'm also super excited to be here, and I can't believe this is finally happening. This is the product of an idea that was born a few years ago.
Yeah, like 30 years ago when I started working.
Well, parts of it anyway. But this is a dream come true of mine to watch this vision be brought to life. So you may be asking, why a podcast? Well, basically, if I've called Mark once and started out the conversation with, hey, Mark, I have a question. I've probably done that. How many times, Mark, would you say?
Once or twice at least.
A few times. But not only have I done that, lots of other nurse practitioners have as well. Many family members, friends, coworkers have done that, and Mark has graciously answered every phone call and been excited about each and every one, at least all the ones that I've made anyway. So you may not know this if you're listening, but we actually live in the state of Georgia, and nurse practitioners here do not practice independently. We function with a doctor that we enter into a protocol agreement with. And so that's not the only reason that I call Mark, though. I've actually never been in a protocol agreement with him. I call him because he's actually really good at what he does. And I'm not just saying that because he's my husband. And Mark's actually pretty humble about this, but I think he's got a gift for taking care of patients. But just so you can get a glimpse of why Mark and why people call Mark for direction so often with medical questions. Mark, how about you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and about your philosophy of medicine?
Well, I appreciate the compliments, but it's not a gift. There's no natural doctors. It's a learned skill. And
I don't really all the way agree with you there, Mark, because I do think that you actually have a gift for it.
Well, at any rate, I think the thing that makes me a little different is my varied educational background. I was a dentist before I went to medical school. I did a lot of education and training, 4 years of college, 4 years of dental school, 4 years of medical school, 4 years of residency. I've been in practice for more than 25 years and predominantly in emergency medicine, but I also did general practice, including outpatient, inpatient, and ICU care for a couple of years. So it's just been a lot of different types of taking care of really sick people for a long time. I was fortunate to go to very excellent schools and an excellent residency program. And I think that learning happens in a lot of different ways. And that's a big part of what Marked Medicine is about. It's mainly a philosophy that I've developed over time that boils down to two questions. The first question is why? Why is this happening to the patient? Why are they sick? Why are they not changing for the better in the way that I anticipated? Why are things going in one direction and not the other? Why are they responding to therapies? Why is a big part of taking care of patients. And more importantly, the second question is, what would I do for this person if they were in my own family? And that's really the core and the critical question, because that allows you to sleep well at night. You do the things that you do for people because it's the right thing to do and it's the best way to do it. And even though the patient may not always have a good outcome, at least you gave them the best opportunity to have a good outcome. And so that's really what this is all about. And I want to share that philosophy by interviewing people and learning from people from all different backgrounds and walks of life. Some will be advanced practice practitioners, some will be physicians, some will be patients and patients' family members, some will be people that do other types of jobs where they interact with people. Everybody has human interaction, and those human interactions can teach healthcare providers a lot of things. Everybody has a unique experience, and and a unique way of teaching us as healthcare providers what we need to know to best take care of people. And that's really what this is about. We want it to be educational. We want it to be informative. We want it to be entertaining. We want it to be very human and real. We want you to laugh. We want you to cry. Mostly we want you to learn.
So what would I do if this person were in my own family? I mean, let's just think about that for a minute. I'm sure if you're listening right now, I'm sure many of you have a doctor or a nurse practitioner that treats you that way. We're certainly not here to say that, healthcare providers don't treat their patients that way. Instead, what we're here to do is just embrace that idea and provide, like Mark said, education and entertainment along the way as well for healthcare providers so that you can really embrace that core idea and keep that at the center of your practice. And, again, when we first started talking about this, we were not sure exactly where we were going to go, how we were going to best share all this information, all these stories with the world. So we just started asking people to record with us. And as we recorded, we realized that not only does Mark have knowledge to share with the world, but lots of other people do as well. And as we were practicing for this show, my daughter, Sailor, actually said to me, she's like, wait, if this is the first episode, how are you going to talk about the fact that you've already been recording? And I said, well, oftentimes when you're writing an essay, your introduction paragraph doesn't remain the same. Oftentimes as the story develops, you go back and you rewrite that introductory paragraph. And I think that concept holds true for many situations in life. Where you start is not always where you end.
Our first guests are perfect examples of this concept. We do want people to know that we will handle adult themes and topics, some of which are very serious and sensitive, but the goal is to educate, inform, and help others, not to shock or disturb.
During this journey, we're going to be talking to healthcare providers. We're going to be talking to people with personal stories. We're seeking out healthcare providers and people with personal stories. Maybe you are a patient and you have a story that you'd like to tell or a question you'd like to ask Mark. Maybe you're a healthcare provider and you feel like you have knowledge that's useful for all of us. Or maybe you have a personal platform that you're super passionate about. Maybe you want to share it with the world. We want to hear from you. We want to learn from you. We really feel like that everyone will find something to relate to here at Marked Medicine. We also have lots of other things on the vision board and in the works, and we're super excited to bring those things to you in the future.
It's going to be great fun. There's going to be great information. It's going to be great entertainment. I can't wait. Really looking forward to it. If you go to our website, markedmedicine.com, and click on the About tab, you will find a more detailed discussion of my philosophy of patient care. I hope you will find it interesting, and I certainly hope you will join us in the future.
Hey, Mark, I have a question.
Okay.
How many times do you think I've asked you that question?
Do numbers go that high?
I doubt it. And from that concept, the idea of Marked Medicine was born with Dr. Mark Brulte.
And with Amanda Brulte, my favorite nurse practitioner.
And you're now listening to Marked Medicine.
Hello, we're glad you joined us here today at Marked Medicine. We're grateful to have our guest today. We have two guests. First is Miss Marnie Smith.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. She is a pre-K teacher with over 16 years of experience and has a personal story to share with us that is very important. And we also have Miss Heather Day, a school nurse with over 25 years of experience. How are you?
Sir. I'm great. Thank you. Appreciate y'all having us.
Thank y'all for joining us. We really do appreciate it.
Very much our pleasure. This is a very important and serious topic that we have today. We hope we can benefit everyone and maybe prevent a future tragedy. Also, perhaps as healthcare providers, we can learn how to properly deliver care with compassion under very trying circumstances. So I think we just need to get right into it. Marnie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
So
Good.
Start with your story. Start how you best feel we should start this story.
I can start by saying that I lost my daughter to suicide 4 years ago, and you would have never picked it up. She was outgoing, a cheerleader, had friends, was busy, and never knew that anything that was troubling her that night that she did this. nobody's ever asked, but I will share it on here. She had actually taken over-the-counter sleep aid that you get. We still don't know how many or whatever, but if you saw her on the street every day, you would have never thought that she was dealing with something like depression or something that was really bothering her, enough for her to want to take her own life.
And your daughter's name is?
Caroline.
And she was how old?
16.
16. Beautiful girl.
Thank you.
And so when this occurred in your family,
Mm-hmm.
shocking is
Yes.
not a big enough word, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Can you relate the events or?
What happened that night, which I share this story often, it was Valentine's Day. And so that was the last night me and her brother got to be together. And I said, I bought him a heart-shaped pizza from Danny's. Mm-hmm. And we sat around the bar that night and ate and just listened to her and her brother talk. There was a 2-year age difference. She was the oldest. And then she left to go to the baseball game at the high school. And when she came home, it was probably about 9:30. She seemed fine or whatever. So she went to bed. Her brother was already in bed. She went to bed, and then I went to bed. Then I woke up about 1 o'clock to a message from her on my phone that said, check on me when you get up in the morning. So I run to her room to find her laying in her bed having seizures. So I immediately called 911, and I don't know if y'all want graphic stuff, but, I've never seen someone doing that. And at that point, she was already starting to foam out of her mouth, and she was starting to lose her color. So I knew to start doing CPR on her. And so I started doing CPR on her, and I did that until the ambulance got there, which to me seemed like forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so then by the time the EMTs got there, which those two EMTs that came that night still to this day have contact with me. And one of them actually kept the heart strip of Caroline, and she still has it. So I remember when they came in the room, I'm panicking there, and I'm screaming at them, and they're trying to get me to go. And Caroline had written letters. They were laying on her bed. And so they got Caroline, they had to do that thing to her chest. I remember they put her down on her floor, and I was like, any mom for a teenager, I was like, oh my God. First off, her room's a disaster. I'm like, y'all are in here and she's got crap everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Just
I was
typical,
like, just
right?
keep the clothes away to try to get her down, And they were doing that as I start reading some of the top letters for me. She'd written me and her brother. She'd written Addison, Heather's son, because they were lifelong best friend. And then she'd written 4 other of her good friends. And I kind of was just reading through it, and I got to the part that I wished that I would have told you how I was feeling, because I knew that you would have got me help. And so then I just really didn't know what to do. So my parents came over because they lived down the street. It took them a while to get Caroline stable enough. They had to get another ambulance to come to the house because they had to have so many go in there with her. And so I remember the whole ride to the hospital here in Douglas behind the ambulance, just thinking, they got to do something. I mean, surely we got to do something. And I told Mama, I said, my mother rode with me. I said, it looks like she's doing good because they're going faster now. But when we got to the hospital, I had to wait a few minutes, and then they let me go in there. And at that point, they kind of were just telling me, we've got to get her out of here, because I think they knew then. I don't know how long she had went without oxygen, because she was starting to lose her color. And so I was like, well, this is hopeful if they're thinking they're going to be able to fly her out. So they flew her to Savannah. Me and Heather, I rode with Heather. And when we got there, they had already placed her on the ventilator and everything else at that point. And that doctor was asking us what, because the only thing that we found that she had taken was the over-the-counter sleep aid, like a Walmart brand. And the doctor was like, there's nothing in her. Like, she has no drugs, nothing in her. That's obviously she had just had too many of that, and it was too much Benadryl type stuff, I don't really know the medical part of it. But so she was in there from February the 15th, and she passed away on February the 17th, which I think that the neurologist, basically, because when we got in there, of course, I've never seen somebody on a ventilator and you come across to see your child. And I'm standing at the end of her bed looking at the thing hooked in her mouth. And I'm looking at her eyes, and she's just, of course, her eyes are closed. And she's nothing. And so I kept going up to her, touching her and talking to her, and just not seeing a reaction. I think they already knew. But the neurologist came in, and I don't think they wanted her to go as long as I kind of wanted them to. And I said, no, there's got to be something else. Can't we? And he said, okay, we'll give her we'll do the test on the 17th to see if she has any kind of response. But the whole time she was there, we would talk to her, and I would even open her eyelids to try to see. And of course, her eyes aren't there. And they came in on February the 17th. He did different kind of tests. I remember I had to sit in the room with her, and we had to be completely silent. He took her hands and he put them in ice and then ice water to see if she had any response. They would lift her eyelids. Of course, there was never any kind of response or anything. And so then he told me that he was sorry that she had passed away, and that basically the ventilator was the only thing keeping her alive. So after that, a woman came in about donating Caroline's organs because they said she was healthy. Nothing had missed. They were kind of having a hard time a little bit with her kidneys at that point, but they were still keeping all that going. And so Caroline was a organ donor. One of her kidneys went to a 63-year-old in Georgia. That's all I know. Her heart went to a 61-year-old mother of 3 in Kentucky. She also has, I've heard from several tissue recipients and her eye recipient, who is an artist, who now can go back to doing art because she can see again. And so it kind of hit hard, after that, because I would have never thought one of my children would commit suicide. And I know that there was something they said about a boy, and stuff like that. But it just at that time, if they could see how much they're valued, could they think about it, But I'm glad I can speak about it because I think Caroline would want me to. Because I think that she would want me to get it out, that you do need to know your worth and things like that. And I've said it, and I can say it on here, it's hard for a parent to want to keep living after you lose your child. But I said my purpose was Caroline and her brother Trent, that I got to keep doing it for them. And, as a parent, you go through the different things of grief. As soon as Caroline passed away, she passed away in February. In March, I had my son going to see Mary Pye in Valdosta. I don't know if y'all know her, but she's phenomenal. And I had him talking to her every month, and he still does, and he's in college now. But no, he doesn't go every month. But it took me until last year to talk to Mary, and she said, that's because you're not ready. You're not ready. You need to know when you're ready, and I can tell you're not ready. But, of course, after Caroline passed away, a lot of people were like, well, you need to get on medicine. I was like, no, because you can't medicate losing somebody. And I still have to deal with it every day. But suicide is a hard issue because people don't like to talk about it. Mm-hmm. People don't like to talk about their mental health and that they're sad and that they're depressed because it's like it used to be a taboo. We don't talk about that.
Right. That's right.
You would have never thought that something was bothering her because was she your typical teenager? Yes. She was moody, like a teenage girl. But she wasn't one that was withdrawn
Right.
didn't talk to anybody, you know, so you would have never thought that this was something that just crossed her mind. And I never thought that night, as happy as she seemed, that that's how the night was going to end.
For 25 years, I've been out of residency, 100,000 patients, thousands of tragedies, and it's almost impossible for me to sit here and listen to you. You're incredibly brave. Heather, how long have y'all been friends?
Actually, Marnie was one of my very first friends in the whole wide world. We've been friends since we were about 4 years old. We went all the way. We didn't go to grade school together because she went to East Side and I went to West Side. But our sisters were friends, and we became friends in middle school. We were the bratty little sisters that nobody let hang out with them. But I kid and I tell Marnie, I tell everybody, Marnie and I were the best car thieves in the world. My sister and her sister, they could drive well before we could, but that didn't keep us from stealing those cars and getting uptown. So Marnie and I have a lifelong history together. And my son and Caroline were very close. And
The same age, right?
Addison's a year older.
Okay.
Actually, he's just a couple of months, but he was a grade older.
Okay.
But there's not a single memory that I don't associate her with. And I tell people a lot of times that I couldn't have loved her anymore if she had been mine. And that's the God's honest truth. And I told Marnie that night whenever I got to Coffee Regional. Actually, the first thing I did was I went and woke Addison up because we knew that she had talked to Addison. And I said, baby, what did she say? Mm-hmm. And my reaction was inappropriate that night. And I have had to fiercely apologize to my own son for that, because I said, baby, why didn't you come get me? Why didn't you wake me up? And he said, Mama, she promised me she was fine. And he's literal. He's a child. And he took it as she's fine, which she had told him that she was fine, you know, and that whatever she was upset about, whatever was bothering her was going to be fine. So I went down to the hospital, and when they said they were going to ship her, I told Marnie, I said, well, we're going to be fine. You know, like I thought, we're going to get to Savannah. They're going to pump, they're going to bind, and we're going to be fine. And the second we entered the room, I knew we were not. I knew medically, with my background, that we were not. But thankfully, she had some amazing, amazing doctors, and
Yes,
they did a lot to help our feelings, I feel like, and to help the enormous amount of children that were there to show their support. And no matter how many times I hear the story or tell the story, I still cry. And it's as fresh today as it was then. And that doesn't change. That doesn't get better. But what does get better is seeing the strength that talking about it gives her. Mm-hmm. Then I know we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this, and she's going to be okay, because since she has started talking about it, I visibly see the strength that it gives her. So the more she talks, the more she gives her story, the more she tells exactly the details of what happened that night, I can physically see the strength that it gives her. So that is going to be the good out of this. There is going to be good everywhere we turn from this. And I've already seen it. And that makes a world of difference. But I think that, you know, she has been so good. She started talking, and it's like everywhere wants her to talk, you know, and so I'm kind of the tag along, and I'm kind of making sure everything's good, you know, and we go and she talks, and people are moved. The rooms are silent. Nobody utters a peep. She just actually talked to Axon County's opening convocation, which is every employee in Axon County school system. And they sat in silence. All you could hear was tears, you know, because a lot of them were female, because they're, you know, in education. So a lot of them were female, and it was completely relatable to almost everybody in that room. And so I think that's what, you know, a big side of this is that, you know, don't assume that these kids are not at risk, because
that's right.
They don't tell you, or they're not withdrawn. They're not having issues, you know, and one other thing that I'll say for sure is Caroline was very bright. She was a very smart girl, very, very smart girl. Had a stubborn streak a mile wide, but she got it honest. And she she would speak her mind and tell you. So you would have assumed that she would have been one that would come and say, Mama, I'm struggling. I got to do this. I got to do that. So you can't assume. You can't assume with your own children. You can't assume when kids come to you, like as a school nurse, we both work at Ambrose and we have some lower income kids, some kids with some real problems, So don't assume because you have one or two that don't, that they're above this, because they're not. Nobody is above this kind of thing. And when it does happen, you can't, I saw, Marnie mentioned the stages of grief, and I saw those firsthand with her, literally stage by stage. And the worst one for me to see as her friend was the regret and the second guessing of what she did. And she had no business second guessing anything that she did as a parent, because she's been nothing but a good mama. We've raised our children together, and I tell people all the time, I remember days when we scraped up quarters and packed lunches and took our kids to the beach. And they were raised like siblings, and I would have never guessed it. I second guessed myself. I talked to Caroline 2 days before this happened. We had a serious conversation about how I was going to blister her behind for being snappy to her mama.
Like I said, she was a typical teenager.
Right. And she said, Aunt Heather,
and
I
takes
will.
a village.
Yes, it does.
I said, you get your butt on that phone and apologize to your mama. She said, Aunt Heather, I will. I said, okay. So it's, that was the hardest part of the whole thing to me, was seeing her have guilt over something that she did not have to have any guilt over. She's been a fantastic mama.
Well, thank you. But, I said with suicide, you're left with daily why.
Right.
You never are going, like if someone's
right.
diagnosed with cancer, you know
That's
the
right.
why. Yeah. But with this, you don't know the why. So
That's
I still question myself, did I not do this good enough? Did I not do this? And now she was the princess, because she was the first grandchild and the first great-grandchild. So she was spoiled, but it's just like she was stubborn. She was your typical teenager. Me and her would go to blows, but just like
that's normal.
Just
that's
like
normal.
you just normally do.
It's and no excessive behavior,
nothing,
no risky behavior, nothing that that we could have identified at the time for sure.
And I still go through the stages of grief. Now every night I don't sleep because I'm scared. I blame myself because when she came in, she was fine, but I have fell asleep for a moment to wake up to my guilt is how long has she been laying in there before I woke up to the message, check on me when you get up in the morning. So I was like, so I don't sleep at night because I'm scared. I'm scared of the what ifs. And every time I close my eyes, I still see her laying there having seizures. That's what I see. And that's why people said, you need medicine. I said, no, I don't want medicine because that does not go away. That's something that you'll just always see and deal with. But like my son is at college, I'm scared to death something's going to happen to him. So that's why I'm just like, that's another what if. So I don't go to sleep. I just sit there. And I think that's how it's always going to be.
You hear in society all the time that suicide leaves such a hole, such a void, and that is the truth. And it's not just for the people directly involved. Her friends had that. Right. Her family, her grandparents, her aunts, uncles. We all have that. And but it is a selfish thing in that respect. That it does make you question things, and you do worry about things that you wouldn't have before. And so, she is right. I see her struggle with that daily, that what if something happens to Trent, and what if, something happens, and a lot of Marnie's has turned into not taking care of herself, focusing more on, her children at school. What she's not telling is she came back to work immediately. Because she had to. She said, I can't stay home. I can't stay here. But then there are comforting things that you can think back on, like the amazing emergency room staff, like the amazing flight nurses that did things that, looking back now, give us some peace, knowing that they tried, knowing that we were in the right place, knowing that they did, the things that we could live with,
I have, I wear around my neck, it's her thumbprint. When she was in Savannah, they came in and they brought the plaster in there and made the imprint of her hand, which I have sitting by my bed, and then they did her thumbprint that we could send off, and it makes into the charm and everything. But just those nurses were like, they saw how many people, her friends sat in front of those automatic doors. It was just rows of them. And they were like, we have never seen anything like this. They gave them markers and paper. They all drew and wrote notes, and they wanted them to hang them in Caroline's room. So, and then we'd all come in there, and the nurses start reading and be like, do I really want to know what happened that night? I said, no, we probably don't really want to know what happened that night. But it would just give us something to laugh at, right. And just keep and I'll never forget her first nurse when we got there was a male nurse. And I had him turn red because I was trying to be positive, and I was like, Caroline, if you could see how handsome your nurse is right now. And he was like, stop, you're making me blush. But they were just took such good care of us and took such good care of her. And like her very last nurse, which she had been with her a couple of times, she was pregnant with twins. When they took Caroline into the OR for her organs, she would text me back and forth, let me know how it was going. And, most of the time, probably when you leave, you don't get that same contact and interaction, but they still did. And even after she passed away, some of the nurses still reached out. And like I said, the EMTs from here, I don't know if we could use names, but they were the two that actually came, and they are still in contact because they said that it was just an impact that night. Mm-hmm. They had never seen something like that, and to see that she was not a troubled child, or she was not, there wasn't a list of that she's always been depressed or something like that. They said she just made an impact on them that night. Like I said, Paige still has Caroline's heart strip from when they got her heart back. And she said, I keep it in my pocketbook, and I still keep it. And Jenny reaches out to me like when they brought the organ donation quilt to Coffee Regional just this past April. Sarah reached out because Caroline's picture was on it from that year. And Jenny, she'll tell me they've got the organ donation flag up, and, they have really helped me a lot. And they even come to the house and see me sometimes and stuff like that. It just shook our community because nobody saw something like this coming.
Right. And then we also had a cluster, what they've identified now as a cluster after that. We had another child that actually passed away from suicide.
It was 2 weeks.
2 weeks later. And then we had several attempts in the area. Yeah. So that's deemed by the Department of Public Health as a cluster activity. So out of that cluster activity, Know Your Worth was born. The Know Your Worth campaign was born from that. And so there are positives in this whole thing. And like, I couldn't help but being medical thinking, those nurses probably never thought that what they were doing would one day be something positive that she can think on. So, just the little things that stood out, like the flight nurse contacting us, like, we might not have thought a whole lot about it that very second, but thinking about it 4 years later, that got us safely to Savannah. That got us there.
And it took her all of 10 seconds.
Absolutely. And and I remember, I can't tell you her name. I can tell you exactly what she looked like, but we went in one morning and she had braided Caroline's hair. They told us to go get toenail polish, and they would paint, they let us paint fingernails and toenails and, things like that just somebody went out of their way. Yeah. Just one little thing.
I think they did it too because they knew the severity, and they knew that Caroline had already basically passed away. But they were just, they were just so nurturing, and just they would love on her, and they would,
but things that stand out 4 years later,
the compassion
that make you feel like, we got through that.
Yeah,
we're gonna get
the
through
fact
this.
you got to paint your baby's
Right.
toenails.
Yeah.
You know, or that we're able to collect all the notes that the friends have written on the walls, you know, just things that, you know.
They even made
somebody-
her a quilt.
Right.
They came in because they have a group that makes quilts for kids in the NICU. They came in and they said, "We've got Carolina quilt. Can we put it on the end of her bed?" And then they made her a pillowcase. You know, I mean, they just were constantly just there, and they were so nice and compassionate. They even let me camp out in that little waiting room right beside. I remember it was right beside her room.
Actually, a little doctor's
Doctor's
lounge
lounge.
took over, and I think the doctor was really supposed to get some rest in there, but like literally,
They let me.
Yeah.
Because I told him, I said,
He didn't need any of
No,
that.
he didn't. No, he was good.
Doctors need to work. They don't
Yeah,
have rest.
yeah.
There's not enough of them. They can all just sleep later. They need to work.
They went and got us blankets to lay on that little couch because it was directly connected to her room, and I was like, I don't want to leave. Now my parents got to stay, and my son stayed. I let them stay at the Ronald McDonald, but me and Heather and my older sister stayed right there in the. You know, they never ran us out. They never said you've got 30 minutes to get. No, they were like, you want another chair to put your feet in while you're in this little cubicle with. And it was, you know, and I would just lay there at night and I would hold her hand, and I just knew then that she really wasn't there, that she had probably already passed away. But I would just hope and pray she could hear everything I was telling her about how much she was loved and how much we all loved her and this and that. But just the compassion from the medical providers there made it somewhat easier. That's not an easy situation to be in, but you could tell that they were parents, or, you know, and so they let me do what I wanted to with her because I think they knew she was gone too. They were just helping give me time.
A lot of what Mark Medicine is about, well, really what it is about, is I want healthcare providers and patients both to understand that, you know, you should treat your patients as if they're a member of your own family, and patients need to understand that they deserve that. And so every question that I had written ahead of time about this podcast today, y'all have touched on and done a far better job than anybody could ever hope for. But one of the questions specifically was the impact upon y'all and your families that the attitude and the caring nature of the healthcare providers. You've more than adequately touched on that. But what can y'all tell the healthcare providers about what this does for a family in an acute end of life situation? I mean, obviously y'all are still talking about it 4 years later, and the impact that these people had on y'all. I don't think the importance of what we as healthcare providers do and how we treat families can be overstated.
Well, and before you get into that, let me just say that Nick and I have a family member who passed away by suicide, and you're right, the impact is not just on one or two, you know, and the impact is forever, and it lasts forever, and it never goes away. And I do think it's important for healthcare providers to remember that there's a person and there's a family on the other side of this that forever carries this with them.
Yes. See, that's what I was saying. I think, you know, you're left with why. And like a healthcare provider can prepare a family if this person has cancer or if they were in an automobile accident and this is what, but I think once you could tell with those nurses and that doctor that they were just as taken back by, I mean, you know, this is a vibrant, healthy 16-year-old who we're laying here looking at right now that has committed suicide. And you could see the genuineness in them that they couldn't answer the why, but they wanted to help try to give a lit peace, but you never have peace from it. But they were, just for the healthcare providers to know, just to take the time, let that person cry to you. The nurses even cried with me. And because they were just like, you know, she's just, you would have never thought it just looking at her.
They even told us that they said, Marnie and I were in the room with them, and they told us that they had never seen the amount of support, love, friends with a patient like that. They had other kids in that ICU that had committed suicide. They shared that with us. But they said they lay there alone, or they lay there with a mama that's crying, or a daddy, or something, but never like 2 waiting rooms and hallways full of friends. And, people came, they flooded in. So they were even, what I'm saying by saying all of that is I think it was a learning experience for them, because they were admittingly saying, we haven't seen this.
That's right.
So I think we were all learning together.
And just their willingness to accommodate us and to help us. And do we want to talk to anybody? Do we want, they wanted to make sure we were okay. Not only was Caroline okay, but they wanted to make sure all of us were okay. Like me and Heather, my sisters, and her brother, and then all of her friends. They wanted to make sure they were okay.
Super proactive about the feelings of the other teenagers that were there, because they were, obviously upset, obviously shaken. And so their offers extended even to begin taking care of them.
Right. Well, and this should be a learning experience, to let all of us know that, suicide doesn't always look like how you may think it looks like in the book or in the text. And, as we talked a little in our text, you can learn so much more from people's experiences versus what you can learn reading a book. But you're right. It doesn't always look like the person who is withdrawn and quiet and who's been telling you over and over again, I'm going to take my life away or whatever. That's a great learning experience. And to touch a little bit on when you talked about the stigma, maybe both of y'all did, of mental health, and I've heard you mention cancer a couple of times. And we've talked about this before, but there is a stigma around mental health, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you experienced this. I know it sounds like y'all had a lot of support. I know you have great support in Heather, but God forbid, but parents who have children with terminal illnesses, we're in the South, you want to do something to help them. You show up, you try to take a casserole, you send flowers, you're texting, what can I do? You're posting, you're whatever. Yeah. And, some people, because of the stigma of mental health, their child may be going through something, mental health issue or whatever. And all of a sudden, there's not always somebody there bringing a casserole asking, are you okay? Instead, it's almost like the opposite. Society's looking at you like, well, and I'm not sure if you experienced this, but what did you do to cause this? Or what did you do
over there?
Yeah, what did you do to make her do that? Or you must have done something. I've even read things like that on Facebook. It's like, well, if you have a child that does this, well, look at yourself. And it's not always that way. And it is very sad for people that there's such a stigma with mental health issues.
And I think that's why some of the suicide rate has went up, because there is such a stigma.
Of course, social media is
that's right.
Huge contributing factor now. That we didn't have.
That's
right.
Not that
we're that old.
That is right.
We didn't have that.
It's a whole different way.
And one of Caroline's great friends, Timothy, he works at the hospital. He went all through Ambrose with Caroline, and he's great. They were all great friends. He even said to me and Heather and us when we went and spoke last year in Jekyll Island at a Family Connections thing dealing with mental health, and it's the first time I shared Caroline's story. Yeah. And it was for all of our regions thing. He said, Black people didn't talk about mental health. You sure didn't tell your mom and them. You didn't tell your daddy, your grandma, none of them. He said, but after Caroline passed away, he said, they immediately, their whole friend group, and plus some of with his other friends, he said every day they decided they were doing a wellness check on each other. And he said, and we're done with this,
right.
Oh my God, it's terrible that you're sad.
Yeah, what a legacy.
He was like, we're not doing, so he said they still to this day, every single day, check on each other to make sure. He said, because it is a serious issue.
That was one thing that was born out of Know Your Worth too, is the collaborative was pastors, counselors, Greenleaf, surrounding county. We had the mayor, we had county commissioners. They had, everybody was on board with that, kind of addressing it with every group of people that, were here in our county,
because
it was an issue.
everybody can make such an impact.
Absolutely.
Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that one of my questions was, since this was an adolescent, okay, this was a teenager, your daughter, what do you think the main stressors of modern adolescence are? I've got a list, and I don't know, and I know it all
we touched on
overlaps,
one
and it's
already.
not, and it's not so cut and dried. But some people have intrinsic depression. There's social media and the which I call fake book. Okay,
Right.
I mean it's
Yeah.
I know the kids don't do Facebook, but you get it, the concept. And there's peer pressures and wanting to fit in. There's drugs, alcohol. There's relationships that they think are so important and the end all be all of life. And
exactly.
literally in 20 years, they won't even remember the person's
Right.
name.
But,
And so
but it
I
is
don't-
important to them
Them at
at
that
the
moment.
time.
Yeah.
So I
Right.
don't know which ones of those y'all consider to be the most important, or it's different per individual. I don't know. I mean, help us all.
I think it's a combination of
combination of
all
all of 'em.
I really do. And I think that, not even speaking medically, just as a mama, I think sometimes personally that I have failed to realize in my children that things that they think are a big deal, I do not.
Exactly.
And so we have
That's
to,
right.
Yep.
it doesn't matter what we think,
That's right.
it just matters what they think. And,
That's
and
right.
whatever they think is their reality,
That's
whether
right.
it's right or whether it's wrong. And, we can say, it's not even going to matter in 10 years. It doesn't matter. It matters to them then.
That's
you
right.
know?
That's right.
So, I think it's a combination of all of it.
Right.
I really do.
And I
As
think-
kids are under
A lot of pressure.
They
so much
are.
more pressure
They
than
are.
we were.
It's coming from different
Yes.
avenues, and it's hitting them at such a young
Right.
age too, to
Right.
be under so
That's
much pressure.
That's right.
And they got to make better
That's
grades.
right.
They gotta,
That's right.
We were talking earlier about, children having to decide pathways in
That's
the
right.
ninth grade. I mean, my God, we just went to school.
That's
You
right.
and half the time we didn't do that. We
Yeah,
skipped. And,
we didn't have-
we
right.
were okay. We
That's
all
right.
turned out fine. So I was talking to my daughter about it, and I was like, you're not going to believe this. When Aunt Marnie and I went to school, we went to high school and then we went to college. We all turned out fine.
That's
we're
right.
fine.
That's
you know?
right.
So there's just a lot of
And
pressure
see,
on
Caroline,
kids.
she was in the gifted program.
Perfectionist.
And I was on, you're going to be an honor graduate. But now when we graduated, you had honor graduate and vocational.
Mm-hmm.
You
That's
still
right.
went to college. You still went to South
That's
Georgia,
right.
the University of Georgia, Harvard, wherever you wanted to go. You still did it, whether you did vocational. But I was like, no, you're going to. And I learned, and then after, and honey, she would bucket. But honey, she might go in one day, have a 0, and then the next day come out with a 95 in the class. I'm like, don't have to do anything. But I was like, these kids are under so much pressure.
It's a
From
lot.
and so when Trent came along, I was like, when he was because he was in 9th grade when Caroline passed away, I was like, you know what? If you're an honor graduate, you're an honor
Right.
graduate.
It makes
I
you
don't-
see things
yeah,
differently.
I don't care. I don't
That's
care.
right.
That is not important to me. You want to go to school? I back you. You don't want to go to school? I back
I'll back you. That's
And
right.
So, like I said,
Speaking
now
of
he's
doing-
in Athens and straight A's, and I'm like, and he missed being an honor graduate by a 10th of a point, but I was like, hey, look where you're at. I mean, you're still doing this.
It
they're
didn't.
just-
It didn't affect them at all.
There's so many.
Well, I don't remember who were honor graduates. when I
Pressure.
You don't.
graduated.
You don't.
The
I know it
pressure.
wasn't me.
You don't remember.
No, of just being a teenager.
Mhm.
You've got girl boy stuff. You
Mhm.
got
Mhm.
this one might think she's a little more overweight, and really
Mhm.
she's not. She's
That's right.
perfect.
That's right.
This one might have a zit. This
That's
one's
right.
got black hair, but she'd be prettier blonde. I mean, there's just so much they have to deal that we didn't have to deal with.
And I think
And
there's
people-
stigma with
Yes.
talking to your parents
There
about that.
is.
Like
There
saying,
is.
because, I try, go in and I tell people a lot of times, this tragedy made me parent different. It
Mhm.
made me,
It does.
it made me be a human different.
Yeah. When you go through.
That sounds odd to say, but
No.
it really it changed my parenting. It changed my life. It changed the way I react to things, and it kind of lines a lot of things up as really don't matter.
Yeah.
Really at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And so, but I think that like my daughter and I have a relationship where we can talk. My son and I have a relationship. We can talk. just as involved as Marnie was in their life.
That's
you know?
right.
I mean, you can think you got all that figured out, but there's things they go through that they don't
There
tell
is.
anybody about.
That's right.
You know?
Well, and it's interesting you say that because, you know, and I'm sure you learned this in school too, but one of the things that we actually do learn is just ask the person, you know,
Right.
are you okay? Are you
Mhm.
thinking about hurting yourself? And I feel I've had to do that a couple of times in my job, and I've had to do that couple of times with family members, and it's hard to do that. It's hard to ask
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
And I do think it matters though.
Sure.
You know, and I think
Well, that day that happened, Caroline had woke up with a sore throat. And so I said, all right, well, your grandma will take you to your lifelong pediatrician who thought Caroline hung the moon because she was the only one that could talk him out of a shot. And when I went to see him afterwards, because, you know, since they flew her in the helicopter, there was so much insurance stuff. He was just like, he never knew because she was perfectly fine that morning. That same day, when he said he would have never thought it, but from when he saw her that morning, because she was just like she was any other time she came in his office, that he would have never thought that she was sad. So,
well, and let me say, I wish you wouldn't beat yourself up for what you said to your son or what you did or didn't say. And I wish you wouldn't beat yourself up. And I know that's easier said than done. But the reason I say that is because you both deserve grace. We all do. And give yourself some grace. I can see where sometimes, you know, someone on the outside, again, you know, may want to, I'm not saying in your situation, but they may want to say, well, what was going on? Or,
yeah.
what was missed or what was this or what was
Right.
that, you know, that's not always the case. It's
Right.
not always textbook, and you should give yourself grace because everybody's just getting up for the most part and doing the best they can every
Yeah.
day.
For
Yep.
And, you know, I actually had scribbled down a comment early on listening to y'all speak about, I heard the guilt in your statements,
And
out
we
from
felt
both of
the
y'all.
guilt.
And I think it's, and I'm certainly not a psychiatrist, but I think it's a guilt born of frustration and a lack of control. Okay, I think that,
Because if you could change it, you
And
would.
Sure.
I don't-
Absolutely.
and I heard Heather say that her reaction that night was unacceptable or abnormal or whatever words you used, but I describe normal in this
That's
situation.
right.
There isn't a
There
normal.
isn't.
Right.
And
You're
so
right.
I don't think that's I understand the emotion behind it, but I think anybody observing it that's objective and fair would say
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, and
that's
I'm-
really
Right. And I'm not sure
an
if it's
incorrect and inappropriately placed guilt upon yourself and you too as a mother. And
Yeah.
and the other thing that I heard y'all say was why? And another part of marked medicine is, I tell people, healthcare providers, you know, ask why. Why is this happening to a patient? You know, and I'm speaking pathophysiologically, trying to make a diagnosis. And that's great. That's fine. That's science to the limits that we can utilize it to help people and overcome disease and treat disease. But this is a different kind of why.
Right.
There's oftentimes in life not a why that you can understand. There's only a what. Okay.
well, it
And
is a
that's-
different
and
kind
that's-
of why, but not. I mean,
That's
and I know
very
I'm kind of
frustrating to hear, but true.
I know I'm kind of butting in, but I think I have a very relevant point that goes along with what you're saying, and maybe you can help me put it into words. But maybe because of the stigma, you feel like you don't know the why, or you feel like it's a different kind of why. Because I don't know, you know, mothers who have children who have a terminal diagnosis, again, God forbid, I know you're very active in childhood cancer awareness, and, you know, I don't know if they always sit around and sure they ask why. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it's the same.
Right.
And why not? You know, because what your daughter went through is no different. It's no
Absolutely.
different.
And I think that's exactly the point I'm trying to make. Why does somebody get cancer? Well, is it genetics? Is it toxins in the environment? Is it radiation exposure? Is it some combination of all these things? And that's generally the thought process these days, except for people with, you know, clear genetic predispositions to cancer, is it's multifactorial. There's no specific why. Okay. And no more should the families of cancer patients be stigmatized than the families of suicide victims.
That's right. Because nobody blames the mother of a child who has
Right.
cancer,
Mhm.
you know. And honestly, from the outside looking in, I don't know anyone that blames you for what your daughter went through. And I wish that you could feel that too and embrace that. And I wish that anyone listening who may be going through something similar could embrace that same thing, because it's just as real as those other things.
It's a terrible topic. It's a necessary topic.
It's a topic that needs to be educated and talked about.
That's right.
Is and this is placing a lot upon you, and I'm loath to ask this, but I feel like I have to. Is there any advice you can give to people in general, in specific? How can you help families maybe prevent something like this? And I know that's asking a lot of you, and it may, and I know that
Because
every
again,
situation
there's nothing-
situation is different.
Right, because there's nothing you should have done different.
Right.
There's not.
Well, culturally, we lack resources.
We
We
do.
lack the resources that just like in, I have children every day that need to see somebody. They
That's
have
right.
issues that require
That's right.
counseling services that either number one, Medicaid doesn't pay for.
That's right.
Or number two, the people aren't there.
Mhm.
They're just physically not
Like in
there.
our area, we don't
Don't
have
have
the
any
mental
of that.
health
We
resources.
are
No.
struggling. We are struggling with those types of resources. So we can advise parents all day long. Seek help. Do this. Do that. They're not there. They're
And
not
then
there.
they fall into we don't take your insurance.
Right.
That's
so
right.
then these
That's
parents
right.
are like, okay, well then we're gonna move on.
That's right.
But now I will have to say the one that Trent sees, Mary Pye in Valdosta, she is phenomenal.
Yeah, she's been
Phenomenal. And she was like, if I don't have it, I'm gonna find where we can get it. And and she would tell about, there was actually another mother who her daughter committed suicide. She was a cheerleader.
Mhm.
She was everything,
Very
and
similar
very-
stories.
Yeah,
Very
and I mean, it just kind of
comparable.
came out of nowhere. But Mary also did tell me that they were seeing a cluster of it happen in Valdosta.
Uh-huh.
It's just like I feel like there is not the resources.
There's not. And I'm not trying to blame everybody's problems on social media.
Sure, yeah.
But
Mhm.
I do think that plays a lot,
It does.
in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just a totally different mindset than what we're used to.
Yes.
And there's so much hidden from
There's
us
a lot
that we
hidden from
can't
us.
see.
You can think you're all over it. Let me
That's
tell
right.
you, those are the smartest,
right.
technically
Yes.
gifted kids that have
That's
ever come
right.
through the world are coming right now.
And the stressors that they have if they leave somebody on read, whatever
Right.
that
But
means.
yeah, we didn't
You
answer
know,
them in
right.
10 seconds.
Oh my goodness. And then, and I think, because of that, like for example, when we were younger, if we were at home because we were in trouble or whatever over the weekend, it wasn't rubbed all in our face who all was
Right.
at the party
That's
having
right.
fun.
Yes.
That's
Mhm.
right.
And
Mhm.
so now, and it's hard to parent nowadays
It
too
is.
because of that. Because it's like, how do you make her sit at home and not let her go when
Because
she's going to see everybody else?
Yeah,
Right.
because
there.
we came from the bag phone.
Right.
Yeah.
You weren't texting and you wasn't
Seeing pictures.
Yeah, but
And the beat your behind era.
yeah,
Like
and
it's
you
it's a
would
different
feel
time.
guilt if you got on to them and be like, well, you're not going out there tonight, and then you'd feel bad because now everybody's gonna make fun of her. Now
That's
everybody's
right.
gonna say,
Yeah.
oh, well, you couldn't do
Yeah.
this because you got in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's right.
I would be a little pushover sometimes for Carolina because I would just
We all are.
feel heartbroken. Oh my God, okay, you go ahead because I don't
Then
want
you
That's
begin
right.
to parent out of guilt.
guilt.
Yeah,
Yes,
That's right.
that's a whole nother ballgame.
That's
So,
right. But it's
just
so
happens.
hard because
Very.
of the situations
Yeah,
they
right,
deal with.
right.
It is. It's
And
hard to parent.
I can say that since this happened now, Trent, her brother and I, we talk about Caroline, but we've never sat down like that whole night because his room was across from Caroline's. Like they have just a little hallway. I never wanted him to see her. I never wanted him to see her like that because I was like, that's the picture I don't get out of my mind. I don't want him to, but we don't ever bring up what that night and what happened. And, I don't know if that's good, but, in which Mary has said, she said, y'all need to talk about it. She said, but Marnie, he won't talk to you about it because he don't want to see you cry. And I said, well, I don't want to say something because I don't want to make him cry. She said, who gives a shit? Sorry. Cry. That's what you got to do. I mean, but I think he doesn't tell me if he's sad and, but I can kind of tell, but he just handles and deals with it. But he, being the sibling to someone that committed suicide, he's done phenomenal. Absolutely. He still, You know, like I said, he has a purpose, and I think his purpose was Caroline that keeps him going.
He's been able to work through survivor guilt.
Yeah.
He definitely has
Yeah.
survivor guilt.
So, and he's done really good. Like, I was worried, oh my gosh, is he going back? What's he going to do? I mean, but he just keeps on going. And like I told him, I said, I was coming here to do this today. He told me, oh, that's pretty cool. You know, and when I tell him, they did Know Your Worth, did want Trent to speak, being the sibling. And I told him, I don't think I could ask him to do that, you know. And I did ask him, and he said, oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
You know, he's not, yeah, if he don't, and I told him, I said, that is perfectly fine. I said, this just gives me the will to try to put one foot forward. You know, I don't
say he'd record.
Yeah, he did say.
He did admit
Yeah,
that.
he said, and then I came up with the idea for Know Your Worth because they're wanting it to be when we have to do team A's at the high school in November. I said, what about her very best friends, Carson and Morgan? And they were like, oh, yeah. I mean, I said, what if they could record, you know, what it was like losing their best friend to suicide, not knowing what was going on. You know, they didn't even know. And I said, Trent, you could do it. And he was like, oh, yeah, I would probably do that. You know, but it's just amazing. He's done phenomenal.
That's
with
the
it.
other thing too, is like when they do have that big group of friends, then they all become the patient. They all become
Yeah.
their mamas are heightened and their families are heightened. So, you know, there's a whole nother group of issues, of patients, of needs, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, listening to all this, it's the love that y'all feel for Caroline and her brother and both of your families it's literally palpable in the room.
It
You
is.
both have so much to be proud of as parents,
And her legacy is one to be proud of.
so I guess my question is, because what you're doing is unimaginably difficult, I'm sure. I mean, it's can't be placed into words. So what are you hoping to get from telling people this story? Because obviously you're trying to help people.
To try to
right.
save lives.
That's right.
Just one. If it could just be
right.
one.
So it's worth all of your
The
pain
to save somebody.
to prevent this kind of pain in others.
Yeah.
Well, and
What a human. What a person.
and through Caroline is saving lives through you.
Yeah. And that's
You
what
know?
I told Heather when April Thomason asked me to speak for the very first time, to completely share the whole story
Mhm.
because it's never been told. And I told her I'm not embarrassed about it.
You
know,
shouldn't be.
I'm not embarrassed
Yeah.
about what happened
Again-
to my child. I'm not embarrassed. Of course I'll share it. But I was just like, she's given me the purpose. I think that if she were here, she's telling me to do this. And then I said, I think that if she were here when Know Your Worth started, that she would be a big advocate for it.
Absolutely.
And so that's what
She is an
said.
advocate.
She gives me the, okay, I'm going to go talk about this today. Now, and I said it to April, this should be Caroline's senior year of college. I said, it just gets me every time about this year because I'm like, she should be fixing to graduate from college. I won't get to see her get married, you know, have children. But thank you, Caroline. Every day before, when I
Right.
know I have to go speak,
Right.
I always talk to Caroline. I'm like, Caroline, you got to help me with it.
Mhm.
Some days I'll cry through it. And then some days it's like I can do it.
Mhm.
And then when I leave, then I fall apart.
Right.
So you have proof
Yeah.
Yeah.
that you've already achieved your goal
Yeah.
to
You
prevent
have.
one death.
One.
And
So everything from here on out is
that's
Gravy.
right.
Yeah.
a blessing.
Well,
Yes.
and I told you so when we were not recording that I know there will be lives saved that you'll never know about
Yeah.
because of Caroline
Yeah.
and because of you being that vessel,
Mhm.
you know, relaying her message and her story.
I hope so.
I know that you will be.
I know so.
I do too. Well, I have a question, and this is kind of for both of y'all. If there are any adolescents, teens, early 20-year-olds listening, you know, what advice do y'all have for them? Do you have any advice for them just coming from a mama, a parent?
Talk to your parents. When they ask you something, they're not hell hacking you.
Right.
They're just looking out. They want to make sure you're okay.
That's right.
They want you to be okay before they're okay. And they're not doing it to make your life miserable. They want to make sure you're okay and protected and safe, and that you're not dealing with something that they're not going to be able to understand, and that your parents aren't the bad guy. That they're there to help you. If they didn't ask, then they wouldn't want to help you. So they're asking because they want you to know that they are there to help you and will do what they can to help you if you talk to them.
That's right. Well, and maybe for you, Heather, or both of y'all, what advice do you give to parents?
I say stay involved, and even though you're shut out 9 times out of 10, just go back, continue to go back. I think if you ask either one of my kids, they'll probably tell you that they know I'm crazy, and I'll live by that. That's okay. Cause sometimes you have to show them that you are a little bit crazy, and it works out for the best for me. I mean, I've gotten mine this far with that kind of parenting. But just revisit it. Go back. They turn you away, go back. That's all you can do. At the end of the day, they're not going to realize until their parents themselves one day.
That's right.
That you really aren't crazy, that
Right.
you really aren't mean, and that you really are smarter than they ever gave you credit for.
Right.
I did the same thing. My parents were divorced, and I gave my mom a fit, but it didn't take me long to realize my mama was a very smart woman, and she raised independent girls on her own, and we turned out fine. Now we had rough times, everybody does, but that experience of being raised by a strong-willed single mama, it makes you the same way. You parent the same way. And so, I think kids they want structure. They want, they want to know that we care and we love them. And we just got to keep going back, regardless of the outcome, just keep trying.
That's what I told mine. If I don't ask, then that's showing you I don't care. I said, but guess what? I do care.
I do care.
And I do love you. And so that's why I'm going to keep asking you and asking and asking. Might cause a blow up, but at least I asked.
And they're going to always have friends that maybe their mama doesn't ask. Because, listen, hey, let's be honest. I think you said it earlier. We're all just putting one foot in front of the other.
That's right.
I'm not judging anybody's parenting skills. And I hope to Jesus nobody's, judging mine, because mine have been off the chart at times and, by the book sometimes. And that doesn't matter because nobody's paying bills at my house.
We're all doing the best we can.
Well, that's what I said.
The grace is for everybody.
That's right. That's right.
The scariest hood you'll ever go through is parenthood.
That's right.
There is no
that is right.
manual on doing it.
That's right.
That's right.
Are there any risk factors that either one of you can identify? Because I know you say the signs were just not, the typical signs were not there for Caroline. Are there any signs that maybe that you feel like, well, maybe that was a sign, but I didn't know it was a sign? And you may not have any, but are there any risk factors you can help parents identify?
She in the letter that she wrote me, I should have brought it, but it said, I thought, because she was very involved, like she would go to party. I'm not one of these mamas who thought my child didn't ever do this, because I was not going to ever be like that.
We live in a small town, and that's just...
And I told her, where if y'all are going to a party, let me know you're going to a party, and I
just be honest with me.
Right.
And she said in her letter, I thought that if I drank more, it would make me not feel so bad. Mm-hmm. She said, but that was only made it worse. And then, so at that moment, I knew, yes, I'm not going to say I didn't think that my child didn't drink, because
hopefully none of us say that.
Or ever had.
Hopefully none of us sit here and say that.
I don't live in that world. But I was like, wow, I didn't really know that, she was trying to mask something.
Using it as a tool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one thing. And just if your child which now Caroline talked,
that's what I'm just sitting here thinking is, I think that's part of the problem. I think it's, we
don't
look
really
for signs and they're not
there.
They're not there.
And I think, reading in the books and learning in nursing school and learning in, all this, there are documented signs, but they're not there anymore.
They're not.
You don't have it anymore.
They're not.
You don't, and that's part of the risk, is that, as educators, as parents, as medical professionals, we're looking for those boxes we can check off, and they're just not there.
They're not there.
They're not there. And she can't be the only one they're not there for. We're not foolish enough to think that
she's not.
That these kids that have, everything in the world, you can't check those boxes, but you can't check the boxes for the kid that has a mama that is not in their life.
That's exactly right.
There's just no by the books.
There's not
boxes.
There's
anymore.
not.
Well, I think
lightning does strike,
Absolutely.
it's a real thing, and I don't know that there is a way to prevent that, but
Right.
I think what you're doing, oftentimes there are signs.
Mhm.
Oftentimes there are people with difficulties,
Right,
and
right.
oftentimes people have insight to these difficulties. And I think people will hear your story, hear Caroline's story, hear your friend's story, and maybe, just maybe, you can turn someone around. You already have.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, between the organ donation and the life you've already saved,
Yeah.
you're doing better than most of the doctors I know.
That's right. Well, and I'm thinking back, so we kind of touched on any advice for kids, any advice for parents, and kind of circling back to what we're doing, advice for healthcare workers. I worked
Right.
in pediatrics for 8 years, and, the kids come in for the well checks, and the ones for the adolescents is a little more in depth, and, they're supposed to go through the questionnaire in front of their mama and, answer it if they're drinking or if they're partying or if they have any thoughts of hurting themselves. And who knows if that's even read, or looked at, or if they're telling the truth, because most time, their mama's sitting there like that.
Looking
Who
at
knows
'em.
if they're honest. But I mean, can you give any tips for healthcare providers? Like, I know you said your daughter's pediatrician who adored her,
Yes.
saw her that morning, didn't see any signs. We all know that he did not, or
Yeah.
he would have done anything
Yeah,
and everything, just
absolutely.
like anybody would have. But is there anything that you can think of for other people that maybe healthcare providers should do or ask, or a way they should ask, or any tips?
It seems like it would be easier for the healthcare providers, for the adolescents, if their parent could be in the room, because I think they would be more honest
Mhm.
with,
Mhm.
but I mean, I know, of course, you can't do that because
Right.
they're an adolescent, but I just because from what we found out with this thing that, what is it called here, that goes to the school where the kids, it's actually, they just found out last year, April was saying, that it's asking questions. Have you
Mhm.
thought about killing
Mhm.
yourself?
Mhm.
Have you, and this is something that is sent out to everybody.
It's a risk survey.
Yeah.
Okay.
A risk
And so
survey.
it goes,
Like at the high
High
school?
school, yeah.
Okay.
and she said, getting it, we were starting to see in middle school more and more and more. It's like, I think that they could be more honest. I know they might think their parents might be disappointed in them if my mama sees that I've been drinking, so I'm not going to be honest, and I'm not going to be honest with you that I'm really sad and really think about dying,
Mhm.
so I don't know.
But, to speak on that, though, if we could let anybody know listening, if you are having that thought, if that's your barrier for not seeking help,
Yes,
is your mama's disappointment.
they're not disappointed because they'd much rather have you here
Absolutely.
than to know that you smoked a cigarette or
Right.
went to a party, or they would much rather have you here,
Absolutely.
And I just personally don't think that medically we're going to catch a lot.
I
of
don't
them.
think
I
so
just
either.
don't. I think that they can be more anonymous in a school setting.
Right.
They're going to talk to their friends.
Mhm. Mhm.
But as parents, I think our job is to educate our kids to be good friends
Mhm.
and to listen out for their friends.
That's right.
To know what's inappropriate, to know that it's not betrayal.
Right.
To look out for your friends. But I think that being able to respond anonymously
Right.
is probably where we're going to find
It
more
is,
than
you're right.
anything.
And, as healthcare providers, it may be all that we can do is just try your best to treat every single person how you'd want your own child to be
treated.
treated.
Sure, and
Right.
not just assume because they have friends or this
Right.
or that or that
Or
they
because
couldn't
they're a
be at risk
cheerleader,
for it.
because
Right.
they're, Miss
Yeah.
Beauty Queen, right?
Right,
That,
yeah.
that,
because
that
they're driving the Mercedes, or they've got
right,
this,
yeah.
that they're good.
Yeah, that's
If-
exactly right.
If somebody wants to reach out to y'all for a speaking engagement,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if y'all have a means or a route to do that yet. If not, certainly you can tell us if you do. If not, they can always reach out through our
Through us,
website.
and we would
or
be glad
to
podcast,
relay
and
the
we'd be glad to
message.
put in touch
Mhm.
with y'all. But I think that people should consider that. Organizations, schools,
Yes.
whatnot should consider.
Well, since we've started
you
doing
speak.
this, there's been, Ware County has had a flux
An influx.
full of suicide.
Right.
So Ware County is now taking in, they want to be part of Know Your Worth.
Mhm.
And I've spoke to several places in Ware County, in which I got to go next week and speak. But there's more counties are starting to want to get it because they're starting to see it and they want it to be talked about.
And because school wide, we have students that, they identify more with maybe the lunchroom
Lunchroom ladies.
or maybe the
Yeah.
school nurse, maybe the
Mhm.
counselor, maybe a teacher, maybe it could be the custodian.
Right.
You don't know. So everybody needs to be educated on, you know,
Right.
just building a relationship with these kids,
Right.
you know.
And we are lucky because we are from here and we know
Mhm.
about the Know Your Worth
Yeah.
Collaborative. And later in our show, we hope to have some of those individuals speak with us as well. But for the listeners who may not know what Know Your Worth is, I know that's second nature for us.
Mhm.
Tell them a little bit about what that is, if you don't mind.
Know Your Worth started a little over a couple weeks after Caroline passed away. And it was a pastor. Actually, the superintendent said, what can we do? We got to save our kids. Something's not doing right. So a pastor, what was his name? It's been so many years ago. But anyway, they reached out to him and they met with different pastors and
Like a
preachers
countywide
in the
collaborative.
county.
Mhm.
And one of the pastors said, well, we need to do Know Your Worth. You know, he just threw that out there and he said, I think that we got to start educating the children and the adults on knowing their worth and that they do matter. And that's basically what Know Your Worth started, is to get the word out there that you do matter. No
Mhm.
matter what, you need to know your worth and you do matter.
So then it connected to
To-
like the FCA
Mhm.
clubs, things
Mhm.
like
Like
that.
that.
They had prayer around the pole. That's
Poles.
where that was
Mhm.
born.
Mhm.
They had a huge event at the stadium.
Mhm.
You know, so they had just things trying to get the kids involved. You know, feeling like, you know, they're just
Right.
a comfortable place.
Right.
You know, a safe place.
They even
Right.
go in the school and they had a board where they wrote on an affirmation.
Mhm.
They stick on on sticky notes on
Yeah.
board at the high school, and they filled it up. And then if anybody needed an affirmation, just something to make them feel,
Right.
they'd go and pull it off. And
Oh,
in
awesome.
no time, they are steady having to refill that board.
Yeah.
You know, and it's,
Amazing.
you know, they just said that they would just come by and grab it, and you would have never thought. But really,
Sure.
these kids need to know their worth.
They do. They do. And I actually do believe that Caroline knew her worth and she still is worthy. She's still touching so many
Well, thank you.
lives even today.
Mhm.
But to go back to Mark's question, so that's a little bit about Know Your Worth. You
Mhm.
can find that online, but how can people find you guys online? Or how can they contact y'all rather? I'm sorry.
I think probably by email is
Email.
going to be the best way.
Mhm.
And they can email Marnie.
They can, yeah.
What's your email?
It's Marnie, MARNIE .Smith at coffee.k12.ga.us.
Okay, and we'll link that,
That,
in our
yeah.
show notes
Mhm.
for everyone. And
And then Heather's is the same way, but hers is Heather.day.
Mhm.
okay,
But
and
the
we'll
whole
link
last
that.
part, yeah.
So if they would possibly like to have y'all for a speaking engagement, they could reach out
Yeah,
through
sure.
email.
Mhm.
And again, if we get a message, we'll be more than happy to
Yeah.
forward that on to you
Mhm.
guys because y'all's story is very touching.
Mhm.
It is. And when we, when this idea came to me, well, actually I got the idea because I saw where y'all had spoken in Atkinson
Atkinson County,
County.
yeah.
I
Uh-huh.
didn't realize you were doing it
Yeah.
now. And I was like, oh, that
Still
may
kind of
be.
new.
Yeah.
But y'all are doing phenomenal. Y'all are doing phenomenal. And I really want y'all to know that there is no doubt in my mind that there will be lives saved that y'all never even know about
I sure hope
because
so.
of what y'all are doing
Mhm.
and because of Caroline.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to thank y'all for being here.
Thank you for having
I
us.
want to tell you
Yes.
that Caroline is alive in a
She
different kind
is.
of way than
Mhm.
you would have wanted. But
Yeah.
But she does live
It's
on.
an amazing thing you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Well, Amanda, I believe what we just listened to is an example of the very best that human beings can be, to take such a tragic situation and turn it into a story of hope and good. What she's doing is brave beyond compare. It's informative beyond anything you can imagine. And the importance of what she's doing just simply can't be overstated. She's already saving lives, and her outreach just has to be expanded beyond what she's doing now.
I agree. Her compassion was palpable. Her genuineness was palpable. Both she and Heather, and the story that she has to tell and the story that Caroline has to tell is very important. And this is not an ending to Caroline's story, in my opinion. This is a beautiful new beginning. And I'm honored that she's chosen us to share Caroline's story.
Yes, it truly is an honor.
Help share Caroline's story, I should have said.
In 2022, over 49,000 people in the United States committed suicide. It's the third leading cause of death in the age group of 15 to 24 in 2022.
Let's just think about that for a second. Again, I'm not trying to interrupt. This is just a subject that's close to home for me. But the third leading cause of death for 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, the third leading cause.
Yes, it's a healthcare catastrophe. It's something that needs to be approached by the healthcare system. It's difficult. You just heard the story. There's oftentimes not, a foreshadowing of this event about to occur.
At least not in the way that we're teaching today.
Right.
Hopefully this can help start to change that to a degree.
But that's 5,000 Americans between the ages of 15 and 24 commit suicide annually.
That's far too many.
And it's what we hope to do here at Mark Medicine is we hope that healthcare providers can learn how important it is to be the type of provider that leaves patients and families knowing that you cared for them and you tried, no matter how horrific the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, imagine what they lived through.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you heard it. You don't even have to imagine it. And yet they still care for the nurses and the paramedics.
Right.
And the people that came in and changed the linens and the doctors and the helicopter personnel, everybody that was involved in her care made the most terrible thing they will ever experience as good as it could be.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Because of the compassion that they were shown by the healthcare providers that they interfaced with, they have been able to turn what was the most horrific situation that they had ever faced into a pleasant experience, if I may put it that way.
At least pleasant in their relationship with those people.
Yes.
Certainly not pleasant, but it's,
Right. And, being a healthcare provider may not always be what the textbooks say. It may not always be making sure you have the right patient and the right medication and you're giving it at the right time and the right dose. It may be bringing in the nail polish, braiding the hair, bringing in the blanket, just being kind, just treating them the way that you would want to be treated.
It's a terrible and wonderful responsibility all at the same time, what we do.
It is. And to have this opportunity to hopefully share stories like this with listeners, with the world, and, help healthcare providers understand that, hey, we do impact people's lives. Just like we said with Marnie, I truly believe that you'll make an impact on people that you'll never even know about. I believe the same thing about healthcare providers. You will be making an impact on the people that you interface with. You may not ever think about them again, and that's okay because we come in contact with so many people. You can't possibly remember them all, but there is a possibility that they all will remember you.
Thank you for listening. And one more point I'd like to make is that anybody out there hearing us, if they're having a crisis or thinking about suicide or having problems in general, you can always call or text the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. This is a resource that is available 24/7, 365 to help you. It's very analogous to the 911 system. You dial 988 and you will hear a pre-recorded message as they connect you to regional or local people to speak with you about your situation. It's a very good resource, and it's something that people may not know about, like they know about the 911 system, which is always the ultimate fail-safe system in life that you can call if you have a medical emergency.
Right. And to find us, go to our website at markedmedicine.com. That's MARKED medicine.com. And on our website, you will find links to our social media pages. You'll also find a button, like Mark talked about earlier, that you can click on, ask Mark. You can submit questions. We would like to hear from you in the future. Again, if you have a story to tell, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know. And thank you all so much for joining us and for listening. And we hope that you will join us in the future.